All right, we'd like to welcome everybody to our special session public hearing, 5 p.m. on August 22nd, 2023. Call to order, declaration of a quorum, 6 members present, 1 absent. Brings us to item C, public hearing, receive input on proposed school district budget and tax rate for the 23-24 school year. Ms. Draws.
Thank you. So I'll begin the public hearing on, required public hearing on the proposed budget and tax rate. And it's not moving. Okay, we'll do it this way. So the purpose of the public hearing is to discuss the school district's proposed budget and tax rate tonight. That will be for the general fund, debt service fund, and the child nutrition fund. And the notice of this public hearing has been advertised as required and posted on our website. So a few terms and definitions first that will be used throughout this presentation is ADA, or average daily attendance, and that's pretty self-explanatory, but that's used in our revenue calculations. WADA, or weighted average daily attendance, and that is our ADA that is weighted for different special populations such as special education, bilingual, CTE. The NNR, or no new revenue rate. This is the tax rate that would generate the same revenue, but with the same values as the prior year. So no new construction or new values calculated into that. So kind of compares apples to apples. The MCR, or the maximum compressed rate. This is the tax rate that is calculated by TEA, and that we must be reduced if we have more than 2.5% property value growth from last year. And the last is the VATR, or voter approved tax rate. And this is the maximum tax rate that we as a district can propose, or you as a Board of Trustees approve without going to the voters for an approval or an election. But first, we'll talk about the assumptions that were used to create this proposed budget. We have a 1.6% enrollment growth that calculates to 14,717. We used a 94.8% attendance rate. A lot of people have heard that attendance since the pandemic has been lower than normal. This was the same attendance rate that we experienced this last school year. Property value growth, if you compare to last year's property values using the same exemptions, because a homestead exemption is calculated to go up, it was 17.3% for this proposed budget. It's 11.3% when you use the $100,000 homestead exemption that we'll talk about in just a minute. And a property tax rate utilized in this budget of 96.22 cents. That's 69.92 cents for maintenance and operations, and 26.3 cents for debt service. So for the general fund, the proposed revenue is $144,291,445. You see that it's 71% is from local revenue sources, and 27% of that is from state, a very small percentage. 2% is from federal and other. And then for the appropriations, or the expenditures, we've broken it down into the major object codes, that being payroll, benefits, contracted services, supplies, materials, and other capital outlay. $146,011,669. I've also kind of highlighted some of the major things that are included in this budget, or additions. So the biggest thing, of course, is compensation increases. That includes benefits, compensation, as well as any new positions in there. But the beginning teacher pay increased by $1,400, and then 2% is looking at for all returning teachers, at least 2% from their prior year base salary. All other employees would be 2% of their pay grade midpoint. As far as additional positions, it includes 3 assistant principals across the district and some special education positions. Another large increase was the healthcare contributions by the district. Safety and security related items was another big ticket item. This not only is the security officers that we had in place this last year, but coming into compliance with the new requirement of having armed security at all of our campuses. Utilities, fuel, and transportation is a large piece of the inflation. Almost everything else is inflation here, but that was the largest piece. And then looking at bringing back some of those ESSER funds that were transferred over during that pandemic part, and with the federal funds bringing over about $800,000. But you can see 83% of our proposed budget from the general fund is payroll and benefit. So that continues to be, of course, the largest section of our budget. So for the debt service fund, it's a balanced budget, 36.5 million plus a little bit in revenue and expenditures. You'll see the state revenue portion has increased from prior years. That is because of the increase in the homestead exemption. We will be held harmless for that increase, and the state funds will be making that up. It's estimated to be about $2 million. So this includes funding for principal and interest on all of our current bond payments, plus an early redemption to save both the district and taxpayers' interest revenues and any related fees that come along with the handling of those bonds. But it is a balanced budget. And the last fund that is required for budget adoption is the Child Nutrition Fund. Once again, it is a balanced budget at $8,808,155. Some people don't realize that it's a goal of this fund to self-sustain, but they also contribute to the general fund in the way of utilities and some other areas. So that's factored in here as well. So now for the proposed tax rate section. The legislative session this year during the regular session ended end of May, did not make hardly any changes, but in the special session is where we want to focus. And Senate Bill 2 was the one that was for property tax relief. So we want to look at that particular bill and how it affected College Station's tax rate. The first area was a mandatory 10.7 cent reduction for all districts after that MCR, maximum compressed rate, was calculated. And then we have the homestead exemption that I mentioned earlier. Currently, it is $40,000. That would go up to $100,000 for both the maintenance and operations and debt service side, with the state holding districts harmless for that change. Now, what's interesting is both of these sections, they are going to require an amendment in the November election, but we are told to go ahead and factor these in. So what does Senate Bill 2 mean for College Station ISD and our taxpayers? First of all, the maximum compressed rate lowered by a little over 11 cents, 11.07 cents from our current 91.51 on the maintenance and operations side. So that took us down to 80.44 cents. Then we have the additional 10.7. College Station, we go down a little less than that. And the reason is there is a floor that's calculated, and no district can go below that. And we did hit that floor this year. So I think we were like 10.5 cents. So that brings our M&O rate with Senate Bill 2 factored in to 69.92 cents. When adding that to our current debt service rate that we are proposing remain the same at 26.3, that gets our total rate to what was mentioned before at 96.22, so 21.58 cents lower than last year. So this is the format that will be presented in the meeting that follows for our Board of Trustees to review and approve. You can see it has the General Fund, Debt Service Fund, and Child Nutrition Fund, all proposed by functional area. that's listed there and in the numbers that I presented. So overall, the general fund is the only one that is not balanced, with appropriations exceeding revenue by a little over $1.7 million, which if these numbers came in exactly as presented, this amount would come from fund balance. So with that, I'll open it up to the public for any questions you may have or comments.
I'd like to summarize some of my observations. Am I allowed, or is it public comment, Jeff? Is this for us comment or
You can go on.
the tax rate? We have not increased our debt service. We're not taking on more debt. We're not shifting money there. We haven't increased our overhead. We haven't increased our budget other than the inflationary costs. This is purely because the state is taking money from us. I just want that for the record, that we're not increasing debt. We're not adding on massive administrative overhead. We didn't buy a new car for the CFO. This is purely, we're in this position purely because the state is defunding public education. And I applaud you, especially the debt service, being able to give us that flexibility and that liquidity and maintaining that rate, I think is brilliant.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Brings us to item D, public comment. Any public comment? None? All right. That will bring us to E, adjourn.